so that we've got a nice permanent record of the discussion today. And, you know, do feel free as we're going through the presentation, use the chat box or unmute yourself if you want to chip in and ask anything or contribute any thoughts. This is very much an evolving discussion for providers, for employers, for the AAT themselves, and it's going to be really useful to start getting, you know, feedback from all different corners around you know, what we're saying and the appropriateness, I think, of particularly this level 2. So Crystal, I think you've got some slides, haven't you, that you're going to be using, although I thought I might actually even give my perspective on the sort of start point, because Zoe actually used a term which I think you coined, Crystal, around the perfect storm, because we have got a number of things, and some of you will know I love a Venn diagram. They're one of my favorite ways of representing things. So Crystal came up with this, I think, really kind of powerful way of thinking about. There's several things hitting home all at the same time at the moment, which I do think means we need to think quite carefully about the new cohorts, the new intakes we'll see, certainly in the rest of this year, I think into 2022, possibly even into 2023. So firstly, we've got the new AAT qualification that is looming and coming in from February 2022. Crystal will do a little bit of an overview, but fundamentally it's a harder qualification in our view. It's better, and certainly it's going to be a really great platform for moving on to the higher level qualifications, the level 7 qualifications, for any students who would move on to ICAEW or ACCA or CIMA. I think the new AAT qualification, it strikes a brilliant balance between preserving the robust technical fundamentals that we all love AAT for, the basics of double entry, trial balances, suspense accounts, journals, all the way through to consolidated accounts, tax computations, really preserves that fundamental grounding in core knowledge, but also is now bringing in some, I think, really future focused and really relevant areas. There are the themes that Zoe's alluded to, which Crystal will talk about, things like sustainability, technology. There are new papers looking at kind of business awareness and the business environment. You know, I think the AAT is recognizing that their trainees, even at quite early stages in their careers, are advising clients, they're engaging with, you know, business owners, and have to have that broader understanding of how businesses work. It took me years and years to develop that. I think the AAT recognizes that sometimes 18, 19-year-olds need that sort of knowledge. So you've got this new qualification, which is harder and will require us to think more carefully about entry points, pathways, durations through the qualification. We've also then got to bear in mind that the young adults that we're going to be seeing in the next 6, 12, 24 months are going to be in quite a different position to perhaps what we'd be used to. You know, they have gone through an end to their educational journey that I, for one, don't envy. You know, it's been so fractured for them during the COVID pandemic. So, you know, firstly, there's the impact of the lockdown itself. So, you know, I look at my own 2 daughters, you know, they're 12 and 15, but for the last 15 months, they've spent far more time in their bedrooms than probably is good for them, far more time at home than probably is good for them. So you've got the loss of social contact, you've got the loss of opportunities for part-time jobs and some of the basic employability skills that helps build. You know, nobody has been, you know, captain of the netball team in the last year or so. Nobody's organized a school play for the last 18 months. So you can imagine there's a lot of basic employability, basic life skills that perhaps these young adults won't have had the same opportunity to develop that we would have expected in a normal year. There's also the lack of exam exposure. Now, I think actually schools seem to have done a pretty good job of covering core curriculum content, you know, covering their GCSEs and their A-level content, but we've got to bear in mind, nobody's actually sat any proper exams for the last kind of year or two. So, you know, even if we're looking at students who have an accounting A-level, so have perhaps seen debits and credits and seen some of the basics at school, they won't have actually sat an accounting A-level exam. It's all assessed grades at the moment. And obviously, you know, besides the knowledge you build, the very process of preparing for and sitting an actual formal pressured exam, that in itself is quite a life learning exercise, isn't it? And so, you know, we've got to be careful that these young adults who are now coming into the AAT qualification, they've not sat a real exam for a couple of years. So we need to be a bit careful where we parachute them into the qualification. And so I think, this perfect storm of, different elements that are affecting these young adults, we do need to take a great deal of care about thinking how we're going to bring them into not just the workplace, but obviously into their sort of professional studies as well. So hopefully that sets the scene a little bit. I'm now going to hand over to Crystal to take us through a few of her thoughts around the level 2 standard, level 2 apprenticeship. Our view is fundamentally it's going to be far more relevant and appropriate to a far wider pool of students than probably in the past. So, Crystal.
Thank you, Gareth. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, I absolutely echo that. In terms of this perfect storm, we are in a very unusual situation, and appreciating for those young adults the lack of opportunities that they will have had in order to build those skills and have those have that opportunity to sit exams and build that resilience and confidence to go and sit those exams. I actually feel that the new qualification, to an extent, is part of the solution to this problem, in that the new qualification has got these themes, which includes communication there. It includes some fundamental skills that you would need in those in a role in finance, and that we see more and more that you need right from day one in a role in finance. It also has the kind of business pillar going through each of the 3 levels, starting with the business environment at level 2, building on to business awareness at level 3. And therefore, for those who haven't had exposure with part-time jobs to the way in which a business runs and operates, the kind of people that are involved in that business, this will help to plug that gap as well. So I really feel that that new qualification is going to be part of the solution to this problem, and even more so the opportunities that we have with this level 2, which really has come to the sort of fore, like from now, is that it builds those skills and behaviours that are going to be really important in those early days of work. So let me tell you a little bit more about the level 2. So Zoe has touched on the whole sort of process that we've gone through as part of the development of the level 2 standard. I was involved with the Trailblazer group, along with other training providers and a whole range of employers coming from different backgrounds, different sectors. So a lot of people involved in the development of the level 2 standard. It does feel like it was a lifetime ago now. We started it back in 2016, and it was by no means a quick, easy process. There was an awful lot that went into it, particularly in terms of research as to what is needed at level 2. What is that role of a finance assistant? What is that entry-level role where there is a specific job role, a specific targeted knowledge, skills and behaviours that are needed? So an awful lot of work was done with it through speaking to employers, by looking at job vacancies that were out there, looking at job descriptions for those early career starts in a finance role. And the standard was developed sort of working with all of those people together. Employers had a lot of input into what was needed in terms of those skills and behaviours. And it was finally approved for delivery in July 2019, which I'm sure you can appreciate was at a time where it probably wasn't going to be taken up in that September with the sort of normal academic intake. And by the time we got to last year, I think everyone had other things on their minds other than launching a new standard or looking at a new standard being utilised by employers. But now is a great opportunity for us to be able to use this level 2. We'll be able to use it alongside the new qualification and to try and support those skills gaps that we are definitely starting to recognise. So the kind of roles that the level 2 is suitable for, there's a whole range of roles. Here's a sample of them on the screen at the moment. So things like an accounts assistant, a business accounts assistant, accounts administrator, data input clerk, all roles that would be appropriate for that level 2 standard. It's that entry level, those people that are coming into finance for the first time.
Actually, Crystal, I mean, I think Zoe'd already mentioned it, but you know, I know the AAT see this level 2 standard as being really appropriate for people who aren't even necessarily going to go on an accountancy journey or into finance careers. You know, it does very much, I think, replace what was the old level 2 business admin framework, which I know, you know, a lot of employers would use almost as a kind of default way of giving people some good skills to come into, you know, any professional workplace. So, you know, I think we're envisaging some employers might even use this level 2 for those who may go off into, you know, office admin, office management, digital marketing type roles.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's got a lot of opportunities for where it could then to act as that starting point in a career, not necessarily to continue in finance, but it's certainly going to give that those taster and also some core fundamental knowledge that would be very useful in many roles in an organisation.
And obviously some might then realise just how exciting double entry and basic accounting is and really want to then continue that journey.
Absolutely.
And also on that, Gareth, I think that sometimes because we are looking at our organisations and seeing how we can use each role as effectively as possible, that actually having somebody who is in a general administrative type of role to be able to support the organisation and the teams, having a really good understanding of the bookkeeping and those initial tasks that need to be done would really take some of the tasks that maybe an assistant accountant at the moment is doing that's on the level 3, so they can focus on maybe the slightly higher level accounting tasks that they have to do and be supported by an accounts finance assistant to be able to do that kind of the data entry and to support with that. But having someone who's in an administrative role that really understands the business function, I think can be really important and very valuable to the organisation.
Definitely, really important point there as well, that actually allows us to be able to really map out that level 2, 3 and 4 effectively as to what roles and responsibilities they would have. So the detail of the apprenticeship standard, I didn't update the slide. Funding band, not finding. I knew I had to correct that. So £6,000 is the funding band for the level 2 apprenticeship. The qualification is mandated. So just a little bit more about that, what that means for us. The qualification is mandated. The qualification must be completed in full on programme. Now, this is different to what we have at level 3, 4 and 7, where the qualification is utilised in order to gain the knowledge and some of the skills. At level 2, the qualification must be completed. So that means the full qualification is completed on programme before Gateway, and the EPA will sit outside of that, which is different to what we currently have. But when we look forward to what we're going to have at Qualifications 2022, at level 3 and level 4, the qualification will also be completed on programme, with the EPA sitting outside of that. So this is going to be very much aligned through those 3 levels.
And Crystal, am I right in thinking that one of the implications of that difference, because with 3, 4 and 7, because the qualifications are not mandated, things like student registration fees and exam fees, other than the EPA, but generally exam fees are not covered by the funding. So employers would have to separately budget and pay for registration fees, exam fees. I'm sure some on the call are, you know, very conscious of that. But with level 2, am I right in thinking that student reg fees and all the exam fees for the whole level would therefore be covered by the funding, so no separate budget needed?
Yeah, absolutely, Gareth. It would be, because of it being mandated, those will be within that funding band as well. Looking at a minimum duration, so the minimum duration for any apprenticeship is that 12 months before the learner can go through Gateway with the EPA to follow that. So an absolute minimum would be 13 months to complete the level 2. In order for that completion of the EPA and results in that to be available for it all to be sorted, we're really looking at sort of a 13 to 15 month programme for the full level 2 as an apprenticeship. A little note there about maths and English. So there is a minimum requirement, level 1 working towards a level 2. So not drastically different to what our current approach is when we're looking at learners starting at level 3, 4 or 7 in terms of maths and English. The detail of it, the knowledge, skills and behaviours are up on the screen here. So knowledge is very much covered by the qualification. Particularly aligns really nicely to Qualifications 2022 as well, where we're looking at that general business, the ethical standards and that understanding of the organisation. So it can be used with ACCA 2016 as well. So the qualification does map against this knowledge, but I think what we have in Qualifications 2022 really fits nicely with the standard. We've got the accounting systems and processes, basic accounting as well. So what we would expect from a level 2 qualification is all needed to meet the needs of the standard. The skills and behaviours, so these were really driven by the employers who were involved in the development of the standard. That need for attention to detail, being able to communicate well, being able to, from that personal effectiveness point of view, being able to prioritise, manage time, understand when help is needed, understand when they should use an initiative in that role, and behaviours, being able to work effectively in a professional environment. So understanding how to contribute, work with and be part of a team, understand the importance of that continued personal development as well, being able to reflect, identify skills and identify ways in which to gain anything extra that's needed, being able to behave professionally, internally with communications, working with others, but also with that external focus as well, being able to sort of represent the business professionally.
You know, for me, you know, you look at those skills and behaviours particularly, you know, things like attention to detail, customer focus, you know, teamwork. That's the skills I think a lot of young adults gather on their, you know, first Saturday job at Marks and Spencer's or something, where they've got to check, you know, sell-by dates on sandwiches to work out which ones to mark down by 50p, and on the till dealing with customers and somebody's complaining about something, and you know, personal effectiveness, just turning up to work on time and dressed appropriately, and then being part of a team and knowing how to communicate with colleagues. That's lots of skills young adults, you know, pick up on a Saturday job, working in a pub, you know, even on a sports team to a degree. And again, for 18 months, a lot of that's just not been available in the usual way. I know a lot of employers in our sector now, they're actually, you know, prioritising recruiting individuals who have worked in shops, have worked in pubs, because they've got that customer facing experience. They're more interested in that than whether they got a good maths A level, for instance. You know, they're seeing those softer interpersonal skills being far more critical, and actually, you know, they're the ones that have been most hammered in the pandemic. I think you know, as I said earlier, schools I think have done a decent job of covering core curriculum content. It's all the extracurricular stuff that has slid, it would appear. So, you know, I think certainly in the short term, for the next couple of years, there's a real value for a lot of these young adults in some of these skills and behaviours that the level 2 covers.
Definitely, and something which I think we've probably spoken about a number of times, Gareth, that that changing role in finance as well. And in my early days of being an accounts junior, I didn't speak to anyone else. I didn't really get involved with clients, and I had very few small tasks to do that were generally adding up a big red cash book. And learning those kinds of attention to detail, but so much has changed in that role of the accountant that even in those early days of a career in finance, we're expecting that they're going to be talking to clients, that they are going to be much more involved with working with other members of the business as well. So really important skills from a very early start. Endpoint assessment we have here as well. The endpoint assessment is an in-tray assessment and a structured interview that's based on a portfolio. The in-tray assessment will be very practical. So looking at the kinds of activities and tasks that you could expect someone in that role to be receiving on a day-to-day basis in their job, the kinds of things they would have to react and respond to. So it will be a scheduled assessment that they will be sitting there for the in-tray assessment, and the structured interview with your portfolio of evidence, not dramatically different to what we see at level 3 and level 4. So certainly it's going to be great preparation for those who will be moving on to that level 3, where the discussion at level 3 is much less structured than what we see at this level 2. How will the apprenticeship look in terms of the learner journey? What does it involve? Well, we've got the 12 months on programme, which will include an induction and a welcome to the world of work. And that welcome to the world of work is really going to focus on those skills that you're going to need in your early days in your job, but also just understanding, like, how does a professional environment operate? What can I expect to see? Who can I expect to be in different job roles, and how my role might interact with them? There's the level 2 qualification, which is mandated, whether it's AQ16 or Qualifications 2022. It's the mandated qualification, which will cover bookkeeping, costing, working effectively, and business environment, or our computerized accounting software. We've also included an impact skills programme, and I'm going to come back to that in a moment, but we've ensured that we are going to be delivering on the skills and behaviours and supporting that development of those as part of the programme. So following the 12 months will then be the endpoint assessment, that in-tray test, and structured interview. Just a reminder on how Qualifications 2022 looks. So at the bottom here we have level 2. If you haven't had opportunity to find out the information about what the new syllabus is going to look like, I think, Gareth, you put a link in the chat box there. So we have done a number of these sessions, some of which are recorded, and some blogs to provide information on the detail of Qualifications 2022. But just as an overview, the level 2 includes the business environment, and this is going to be a really important paper for those who haven't had the opportunity to work as part of a business before. So it goes through the structure, it looks at the roles, the role of finance, how it integrates with the other areas of the business. It brings in a focus on the external environment as well, so looks at economics, also some law in there, and ethics. A very rounded paper. We've then got those basic in terms of costing and bookkeeping. As Zoe mentioned as well, the introduction of those themes at level 2. Technology is becoming more and more important in that role in finance, and it's introduced at level 2 and how it might be used. Communication, linking to the skills that are needed as well as part of the standard, and ethics and sustainability there.
I mean, just on that previous slide, actually, Chris, I mean, for me, a couple of the real key takeaways of the general Qualifications 2022 changes is because currently under AQ 2016 there's quite a lot of duplication of content at different levels and duplication of assessment. So if you kind of parachute a student in part way through, if you fast track students, even if they don't have much background in accountancy, a bright student will generally cope because we do duplicate and repeat what you're teaching. So, you know, if they come in straight to level 3 and their double entry is not all that strong, normally they cope because we kind of reteach it all at level 3. You know, at level 4 we reteach quite a lot of the basic costing stuff if they've maybe not seen that in much depth previously. So currently fast tracking a bright student actually tends to work quite well because they can pick it up pretty quickly. A lot of that duplication of content has now been eliminated. Good news in some respects, because we're not having to constantly reteach students the same stuff at different levels, but it does mean if students don't have core, strong fundamentals of basic accounting, of basic business, of costing, they're going to find things much harder at the later levels. So, you know, level 2 becoming far more important. There's also these themes that we've mentioned that are being introduced. They are started at level 2 and then built on as they progress. So if students, you know, have got no awareness of ethics or sustainability or technology, to drop them in at level 3 is going to be a lot harder. Also, the other big takeaway is that, you know, for instance, at level 3, you've got this final accounting paper, which is a combined paper of the existing advanced bookkeeping and final accounts papers. They're being mushed into one big beast of a paper. Now, particularly with these fast track students, if we get a direct level 3 entry, they would often start with advanced bookkeeping, which in itself is, you know, quite a meaty paper. If they now start with that beefy final accounting paper, particularly if they don't have much background in double entry, particularly if they haven't sat a real exam for a couple of years, I think that's quite a tall cliff for them to climb early on. And actually, even if, as we said earlier, even if they've done an accounting A level, and so in theory have the fundamental knowledge of basic accounting, they won't have sat an exam in it. Just bear in mind, they won't have actually sat an A level exam. To drop them into that final accounting being the first exam they sit under pressured conditions in 2 years, I think even for somebody with a relevant A level, that's quite a tall order. But for me, actually, the level 2 papers, even if they're just giving students the opportunity to practice some exams in knowledge that they were already fairly familiar with, I think that's a bit of a win in itself, just to get them back into the habit of preparing for and sitting pressured, proper exam standard exams before they then go up to level 3. So, you know, again, it's this perfect storm. I think there's a number of reasons why level 2 has much more widespread relevance than perhaps in the past for a, you know, wider demographic of students, really. Sorry, Kristen.
And so from the skills, to the qualifications mandated, that's included in the journey, we then have some skills and behaviours. So for those who are aware of our apprenticeship programmes currently at level 3, 4 and 7, we have an impact skills programme designed to provide delivery, to provide opportunity for learners to develop the skills and behaviours that are needed as part of the standard, but also as part of the job role at that level. We've extended our impact skills programme to cover those skills and behaviours and to cover what's needed in a role in those early days in finance. So we have, as well as our induction and our welcome to the world of work, we have 4 additional skills modules. So personal effectiveness, working effectively in a team, producing and communicating quality information. So there we're ensuring that we're meeting that attention to detail that's so vital, and working in a business environment. Very nicely integrate with the qualification as well. And so we'll really support understanding and achievement through the qualification, as well as building those skills and behaviours. So it will be practical sessions, so learning, practical sessions and opportunity to practice and develop some of these skills and behaviours, with further tasks that will be expected throughout the journey.
Is that just me that Crystal's frozen for?
No, it's frozen for me as well.
Sorry about that. Crystal, you're in and out a bit on your connection at the moment. This is the challenges of living in the middle of nowhere. Crystal lives in a very lovely rural part of the south of England, but does mean sometimes she has connection issues. Oh, and in fact, she's disappeared completely. I mean, I'm just quite interested on just the messages we're given already. Anybody got any thoughts around some of the, oh, here she comes. Hey, Crystal.
Hello. Joys of living in the forest day.
Absolutely. It's very pretty though, isn't it?
It is, it's worth it. I'll take it.
In fact, that slide you were on, there's because we do have zero certification actually embedded into some of our programs. Am I right in thinking you've also been talking to the CMI about accreditation of some of these elements?
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at how our impact skills programme could be matched to professional standards for the Chartered Management Institute. Absolutely.
So, you know, maybe you know, as time progresses, some of the apprentices will also pick up a few badges from the CMI, which will work really nicely, because you know we're in the process of starting to roll out leadership and management programs for post-qualification education, and we do that often in conjunction with the CMI. So you can actually start, you know, young professionals on that leadership journey as well as their accountancy skills journeys.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, the zero certification in there, it really gives a good knowledge and understanding that's going to support through the qualification as well, because although we no longer have that using accounting software units, there is an integration throughout all of the units of the qualification of that use of technology within the role. So that's sort of how on programme is going to look, the mandated qualification and our impact skills programme, preparing for that EPA at the end, the input, the intro test and the structured interview. So what does this mean? If you're looking at recruiting into a level 2 apprenticeship, so you decide that's what we want to start at that early entry level, we want to provide those opportunities for those young people who are going to be coming into finance for the first time. If you're looking to recruit into that level 2, those people who have no prior accounting knowledge or prior business studies knowledge, or it's very limited in what they did, or they weren't necessarily a high achiever, or they haven't had that opportunity to sit the formal assessments in that area, then the level 2 would be a really good starting point for them. We've talked, as we were talking about qualifications 22, where entry points might be for those new people coming on board. It could be that we just utilise level 2 in order to fill some knowledge gaps or to provide opportunities for sitting exams at those earlier levels before moving on to level 3. So we may look at using part of the qualification, we may look at using the full qualification, not as an apprenticeship, but where we're bringing those people in new to the world of work, actually the apprenticeship over that longer period will enable that building of those skills and behaviours and the opportunity for those impact skills modules to be part of their journey as well. Some of you may have seen this diagram before, which is a bit of a flow chart that we've put together to identify where start points or entry points might be for our new starts, for our new recruits. And those boxes that are in the dark green are all those where a level 2 start to an extent would be appropriate. So some might just be including elements of the level 2 in order to top up knowledge where there is no prior knowledge or prior experience in business studies or in accounting. Or if we look right down at the bottom there, those looking to start with a full level 2 who perhaps haven't done GCSE or A-level accounting or business studies and are new to the world of work. Don't think it's necessarily restricted to that group. I think we need to consider the individual, their experiences, their achievements, and their opportunities in their job role, as well as the importance of those skills and behaviours. So this is focused around the qualification, but really considering those skills and behaviours and the benefits that that level 2 apprenticeship brings there. So mentioned, I think Gareth mentioned as well that there is that opportunity for fast track. This isn't taking away that opportunity for fast track that learners could be starting the entry point being a level 3 apprenticeship with elements of level 2 or straight into level 3. But the level 2 really does fill a gap for us in terms of making sure that our learners are put in at the right level and they're set up for success. If we are looking to fast track learners, we need to make sure that we are putting them in for the right reasons, that they are going to be capable of going in at that higher entry point, that they are going to be capable of fast tracking, and also being aware that we may need to offer additional support. So as an employer, it may be that you do have to offer additional support to these new learners who are coming in, who perhaps have really had an impact of that perfect storm, for them to develop those skills and behaviours, and also that basic knowledge of business. They're possibly going to need a bit more additional learning time. So we will provide top up for the new qualification in order to fill any gaps that there are. Or they may need to sort of include elements of level 2 in a level 3 apprenticeship, but there will be additional learning time that will be needed for that as part of their off-the-job training. We will also need to provide additional support and additional learning for those who are perhaps put in at a higher entry point than they have prior knowledge and experience to be starting at. So really that perfect storm will have an impact on how much is needed for that learner, and therefore what level they should really be starting at in order to set them up.
I think the other thread to this actually that I think is increasingly relevant, I know for a lot of employers, retention and recruitment of qualified experienced accountants is getting harder and harder and harder. You know, newly qualified accountants seem to be like gold dust at the moment. Very competitive market. I know salaries are starting to rise quite quickly. So we're seeing a lot of employers thinking the best way to solve that, and is a kind of more medium-term solution, is to recruit at the entry level, to grow your own, to train and develop, and then work on the retention piece when they do get to qualification, maybe by introducing more post-qualification education programs, taking them through clear leadership pathways, upskilling them in data analytics, variety of areas that I think are very appealing. But we've certainly seen in the last few weeks, literally, we've seen a number of employers who've decided to increase their number of entry-level roles and make sure they're bringing that sort of talent pipeline in a very strong way. I think they're seeing very good candidates, and that's one of the reasons why they're looking to bring in, you know, more talent, taking advantage of the apprenticeship funding, taking advantage of all these extra skills and behaviours that are built into the programmes. You've got those current incentives, and that doesn't involve recruiting by the end of September to get that £3,000 per learner for the current apprenticeship incentive. So, you know, it's really changing, I think, for a lot of employers, the dynamic of how they think in the longer term about their sort of talent and succession planning. And the key is getting it right at the very beginning, you know, building those strong foundations, setting up these learners to succeed, not just through their AAT, but then to succeed through their higher level qualification, and then ultimately through their longer term careers.
Definitely, and you mentioned there those incentives. So if someone was looking to take on a learner, maybe fast tracking into level 3, who would usually use level 2 bookkeeping outside of the apprenticeship as a bit of a sort of start point before the level 3, that wouldn't gain that incentive. I don't know a huge amount about the incentive, so Gareth, do interrupt if I'm wrong with any of this, but those incentives, by utilising the level 2 as a full apprenticeship, then they will be able to benefit from those incentives for learners that are starting, is it between September and November?
Yeah, so if I think back to the sort of last big intake, I mean, we had a lot of employers who brought their new AAT learners in, as you said, on the level 2 certificate in bookkeeping, kind of maybe from September to December, do the 2 papers, the 2 bookkeeping papers, and get the certificate. Then they would sign up as an apprentice in maybe January or February, and that was quite common in the last 6 to 8 months. Going forward, the key with these new incentives, you know, it's good to see that the Chancellor in the budget both extended the time period and increased the amount, so it's £3,000 per learner, but they need to be recruited by the end of September, and they need to be on their apprenticeship programme by the end of November. So obviously that approach of doing the level 2 certificate in bookkeeping as a commercial course, then signing up to an apprenticeship early in the following year, that is not going to work for the apprenticeship incentives. So I suspect we're going to see a lot more apprentices being signed up to their programs, obviously before the end of November. and to do a full level 2 apprenticeship is an ideal way to do that, as well as plugging some of these skills gaps, as well as transitioning these young learners into the workplace effectively, giving them some practice of some, you know, lower level, more straightforward exams because they haven't done that. So, you know, there's a lot of ducks lining up, I think, that make this level 2 apprenticeship standard a lot more appealing. And, you know, we're envisaging there's going to be a much greater take up in the next 6 months and actually then into 2022 compared to what we've seen historically.
Thank you. So as an overall sort of bit of a summary, why should we utilise this apprenticeship? The first thing in there is the knowledge that it's going to gain, those fundamental understandings. I think the level 2 qualification is a fantastic qualification to develop those sort of core basic bookkeeping, basic costing, but also that general business understanding. And when we get through into qualifications 2022, even more so, that fundamental knowledge is going to be important. And we certainly see, I mean, I know I've seen it in class, those learners who have done AAT, and particularly those who have done all levels of AAT, when I'm teaching them at sort of mid to final level ACCA, I can tell the difference. Those who really do have that core fundamental understanding of the basics. Progression. So as Zoe mentioned earlier at the start there, that it enables us to be able to distinguish and define those job roles, and that progression from level 2 to level 3, those learners who are now at level 3, the ability to be able to take on a higher level of tasks, and that will flow through to level 4 and to our level 7s as well. And Gareth mentioned there the challenges that there currently are with recruitment at that qualified level. So being able to elevate those at the higher levels to be able to take on more responsibility, because some of the more entry level work is able to be done by those new recruits who are working at level 2. And also progression, we would expect to see good progression, good pass rates, more achievement of distinctions for those who spend more time on that fundamental understanding and have that exam practice. We mentioned about those, it being for some the first time that they will sit professional exams, rather than putting them in on quite a fast-paced, fast-track approach, where they are going to be expected to power through the exams fairly quickly, and first-time passes are going to be essential. We're able to support them and build confidence at those lower levels of assessment on a slightly slower basis first. We have those incentives, the opportunity to take advantage of those incentives by signing up to the apprenticeship earlier at the level 2. And we've mentioned a few times about confidence. So these young people who are going to have that impact from the perfect storm, being able to build their confidence in terms of their knowledge, sitting the exams, but also in building those skills and behaviours, because there's going to be a lot new for them in that world of work. So bringing in that sort of introductory level of skill training for them. So Gareth, I will hand back to you. That's sort of the main crux of what the level 2 apprenticeship includes.
Fabulous, thank you so much, Crystal. A very kind of concise and clear overview there of some of the implications. I mean, Zoe, just as we're kind of getting towards the end, you got any, you know, of your own observations on the way that we're communicating some of these messages?
I think that you've got it spot on with everything that you've put through, because it is about making sure that, you know, you're getting the right student on the right level for their success, and ultimately to be able to provide that succession planning, you know, for your departments and for your organisations, and making sure that they're given that support and understanding the considerations that you've got to take on with everything that they've gone through, with not being able to gain those wider skills, those business skills, work experience and exams. I think just means that they'll then, excuse me, enjoy the experience much more, which means they're much more likely to have a sustainable career, and then also stay with you, you know, and continue to work with you, and then progress in whichever pathway or you want them to be able to do with you. So it's all about making sure that you get it right, that initial starting point for your trainees.
Thank you, Zoe. So, does anybody have any questions or observations or comments on what we've been chatting about? Hoping everyone can see why we think the relevance of level 2 is far greater than perhaps in the past. I mean, historically, we never even delivered the level 2 standard. Our employers had kind of got used to using the fast track and the shortcut approaches and going straight into level 3 much more quickly. We just think that's going to be far harder. Still a possibility for some students, but it will be for the minority. I think in the past, it's almost been the default setting is to use some kind of fast track approach, and you know, to be honest, doing full level 2 was probably the exception. I think that's got to switch around, where full level 2, ideally as an apprenticeship, will become the norm, and it will be the exception for those students who do have an appropriate academic background in accounting or business, that could potentially then look at a fast track. But it's more I think a stance of there needs to be a reason to not do full level 2 rather than a reason to do it. Does that make sense?
I think I'm quite interested in getting some of our new customer service staff at FI to do it. You know, when we recruit people who are quite new to the working world, I think it would give them a bit of an introduction into what we actually teach, but also it sounds like quite a general qualification that'd be a good introduction to the working world as well.
I'll be very happy to discuss a discount on those courses, Helen. But yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, and that's the other thing, is this level 2, I think, will be a really great foundation for people who aren't necessarily going into a career as an accountant. You know, people who are going to work in more general office admin and customer service and marketing. I think, you know, it's such a nice broad exposure to, you know, a bit of low level finance and accounting, but, you know, other skills that are relevant in any workplace environment.
Can I just ask a question, please?
Okay.
Just in terms of the justification for the funding, it might be something to pick up after Crystal, but when we do the application forms for the apprenticeships, there's a question around what level the apprenticeship is and what level of previous study they have. And just looking at some of the suggestions here, so if they have an A level in accounting, which is level 3, they could still start at level 3. It's more just looking at the wording and how that'd be allowed from a funding point of view. Just from when we had our audit, they were quite interested in prior learning and how you were allowed to start at that level if you had previous experience in that level of study.
What was that question to me? Sorry, no.
So we have done a full mapping of the learning outcomes and assessment criteria that there is in the A-level and GCSE qualifications against the Qualifications 22. Honestly, I have not much to do with my time. I do love this stuff. So, I mean, I do have evidence to back up where there are those gaps in knowledge. Particularly, it depends on the exam board as well at the GCSE and the A level as to what those learning outcomes are that would have been covered as part of their learning. But there certainly are significant elements of the qualification which aren't even touched on through that GCSE or A level qualification. So yeah, I'm happy to share any of that information with you if it's useful.
Brilliant.
And in addition to that, Kate, as well, with the Apprenticeship Standard, because it's broken out into knowledge, skills and behaviours, you'll see how much that actually the skills and behaviours, where you're looking at professionalism, you're looking at customer focus, you know, you're looking at those wider business awareness skills, but there's a lot of that wouldn't have been covered with an accounting A level. So actually there's a huge amount when you're looking at the funding that still needs to be developed for somebody who's an accounts assistant role, so accounts finance assistant role, and so for that, it's the funding. You can really see how the apprenticeship is going to help develop them through that wider piece, as well as the knowledge elements that isn't completely mapped over, as Crystal said.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, that's taken us pretty much up to time. I know Crystal's already dropped her email, as has Zoe. I'll drop mine in if anyone doesn't have my email address. Feel free, you know, any questions in the short term, medium term, long term. You know, this is an evolving piece, but we think it is going to make quite a significant difference to the study pathways and the qualification routes for quite a lot of studiers, all for the good, I think. But thank you very much, Crystal, for taking us through that. Thank you very much, Zoe, as well, for joining us. Fantastic. And thanks everyone else for coming along and paying attention. Do shout if you've got any questions. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your getting damper by the minute Friday, and have lovely weekends, and hopefully I'll cross paths with a lot of you in the very near future. So see you all soon. Thank you.